Hello everybody and welcome to your next AllegroHD tutorial. Now once again we're going to be taking a step farther and we're going to be going to a more advanced section of actually loading maps. Now I think this is a tutorial which you guys are really going to hate at first, and then after a while you guys are going to, once you guys figure it out, you guys are actually going to be happy that you guys have grasped it and learned it. So this is basically stepping from a beginner to an intermediate. So a topic often beginners overlook or often don't learn about is the topic of vectors. Normally you learn about arrays and random numbers, integers, if statements, for loops, etc., etc. But you never learn topics such as vectors until you actually research stuff, until you get into problems with arrays. Arrays are good, but they are very limited. They can be very limited. In our programs, if we notice, we had our map file set to 100 by 100 because we never really knew what size the array was going to be. And we could always resize the array based on dynamic arrays, but it makes the code more complicated and not as flexible as a vector is. Now, for those of you who do not know what a vector is basically a resizable array. So it doesn't matter, you can add elements in the middle of it easily without having to go through troubles in your program. You can add stuff to the end of it, add stuff to the beginning of it. You can resize it dynamically without having to do resizing the array dynamically or whatever. It does it automatically for you, so it makes it much easier to use in the long run. And you can also find the size of the vector as well. Rather, with arrays, if you want to find the actual size of the array, you have to do like size of the array divided by whatever, etc., etc. So vectors are like an advanced version of an array. So right now we're not just learning about singular arrays, we're going to be learning about multi-dimension. We're not going to be learning about single vectors, we're going to be learning about multi-dimensional vectors. And this is a lot to grasp, and for those of you who haven't learned about vectors before, I don't expect you to grasp it all at once, but hopefully you will grasp it later on. So basically, just like a vector, a multidimensional vector is a vector of vectors. So much like an array, a multidimensional array, you would have like two rows, a horizontal row and a vertical column or whatever, and you would have each one you would say it's of type int. You would have an integer value in each of those indexes. So what a vector of a vector is, basically a vector has a type just like an array. It could be an integer, double, float, string, etc., etc. But the difference is that it is a vector of a vector. So basically, if an array has a fixed size, so say the array is 10 by 10, then you can only have 10 integer elements in a column and 10 integer elements in a row. Okay, sorry I'm stumbling across my words. It's like 4:30 in the morning right now. But yeah. So basically, what we do is that when we add to our vector, we don't basically add, when we have a multidimensional vector, we don't add an integer value. When we add to this main vector, when we add to this multidimensional vector, we add a vector to it, and therefore those vector properties are added to it. And therefore, every single time we add to our multidimensional vector, it is a different vector, and each vector can have its own size and its own length, etc., etc., and can be modified according to what you need in your program. Now, I know that sounded really confusing to you guys, so I'm still going to try and break it down even farther. But before I even do that, I'm going to go right into the load map function right here. So the load map has changed a bit, and you're also going to have to learn about vectors, but you're also going to have to learn about the string stream as well if you haven't learned about that, but that is easier to grasp. So same concept. You have our load counter X. We open our file. We create a temp. We create a string called temp line, which is going to store the contents of our file. And now we create a vector called temp vector. Now the syntax for creating a vector is if you have including the std namespace, and it will look like this. So you type the name vector. So yeah, you type the name vector and letting the program know you're creating a vector. You put the left stream operator and you put the type of the vector. So in this case we're using an integer. Put the right stream operator to close it, and then you type the vector's name in there. So temp vector, which is what we had up there. So the syntax probably could get a bit confusing to get used to, but that is how you initially create a vector. So we created a vector called temp vector, and so we check to see if the file is open, and then if it is open, then we have our while loop just like before. And what we want to do before we do anything is we want to clear our vector to make it empty. What we're going to be doing is that we're going to be adding elements to our vector, then add it to the multidimensional vector, and then clear the vector again, so we can add elements representing a brand new vector, and then add it to the multidimensional vector. Now, yeah, I know there's a lot to grasp, but kind of stay with me now. So what we're going to do is that first thing we're going to use our getLine function, which you should be familiar with. So we're using getLine, we're opening the file, we're getting it from open file, and we're storing it in our string temp line. Simple enough. So now we're creating a string stream, and one thing that you should note in the string stream is the word stream. Now if you notice, like the IO stream, when you use cout and cin, or you use the file stream that which we're using right now, the if stream, off stream, etc., all of them have the word stream in there. And stream has to do with things that you're inputting or outputting. The IO stream, you're outputting, or when you use cout, you're typing something to the screen, so you're inputting something into this. You're inputting something to the screen. When you do cin, you're getting input from the screen and storing it into a variable. When you use the if stream, etc., you're getting contents from the file, which you're storing it into the file name you put there. And same with the off stream, you're writing to the file. So all the streams have all these characteristics. So if you notice the same thing right here, when we use if stream and we name the file open file, and the file that we're opening or the value is file name. So for the string stream, it's the exact same thing. We do std string stream, we name the string stream str, and the value we're storing in the string stream is temp line. So that is simple enough. So we're basically storing the value of our line in str. And if you didn't want to do it like this, and you could easily put str temp line, and then would add the value to str. But we want to save line space or make our code cleaner, so we'll do it like this. So we've gotten the line, and we've stored it in our string stream. So now we want to cycle through all the possible values in our string stream. So we're gonna make a new string called and we're gonna just name it s, and we're gonna do another getLine function. Now this time around we have a delimiter, and what the delimiter is gonna do is it's gonna scroll until it reaches this value, and then when it reaches this value, then it will cancel it. It will stop accepting anymore, erase it, and then add what we need to temp vector. So basically it's going to get every individual value, so it's going to get first 0, then store into temp vector, this, all these individual values is going to store it into our temp vector. Okay, so think of our temp vector like so. So the first time it goes, is going to store the value. Think of our vector as an array. So if temp vector is an array, So first it's gonna store in temp vector 0, and that's gonna be equal to 0. Then our second value is 0 as well, so in temp vector 1 it's going to store the value 0 as well, and so on and so forth. So that's what it's storing into temp vector. All temp vector is an array, and to add something to our vector we just use the function push back. So I'm just saying temp vector push dot push back, and then I'm changing it to an integer variable, and then therefore we store it as stored in our temp vector. So basically our temp vector is actually an array, it just worded differently or performed differently. So therefore our temp vector can be of any size because we can add elements to it continuously depending on how much elements we have. Then when we reach the end of this string, so when there's nothing at the end of the string anymore, then we do map.pushback, which is our multidimensional vector, and then we add this vector that we have right here. So remember, our multidimensional vector is a vector of vectors. So we're just adding this vector to map, and therefore all the contents of temp vector will be added to map. So what does this mean? So say temp vector had 10 values, okay? So this is how map will look. It will be like this. Since there's only one vector, it will be map 0 0 is equal to 0. So that would be equal to the first value right here. Now if we want to get our second value, we could easily do it like this: map 0 1, etc., etc. So let's say we added another vector. So like since there's 10 different lines, there's going to be 10 different vectors within it. So say we want to access the second line, right? So basically the first index of our map is going to be indicating the line number, and the second index is going to be referencing to the value or the value in the x coordinate horizontally or in the row. So in the end this is actually an array, but it's a customizable array or a more flexible array because you can add any size of vector into it, and therefore each element of the array can be of different sizes. So I hope you guys kind of grasped that concept. If you didn't, then you could post a question on my forum, codingmadeeasy.ca/forum, and you can I will try and help you as best as I can, or I might have to release a different video to explain it more in depth. So as for our DrawMap function, everything remains the same. Well, it's almost the same. Before we had to do map size x and map size y. The benefit with using vectors is that it gives us the actual size of the vector using the size function. So all we have to do is just say for I equals 0, I is less than maps dot size, and then we increment I by 1. The difference here is that we're going to do if j is less than map I dot size, etc., etc. Why do we do this? Well, as we mentioned before, each vector can be of different sizes, and each element can be of different sizes. For example, map 0 can contain up to say 10 different elements in it, whereas map 1 probably can only hold 5 values. So what this is basically doing is this saying that we scroll to the amount of values that each line has. So for example, right here, line number 1 contains 20 values, okay? So when we go here, we say that map, or say I is equal to 0, so map 0, which is the first line, dot size. So the size of that is going to be equal to 20. So we get 20 elements. Now say we're going for the fourth line, I is going to be equal to 3, so it's going to say get the size of map 3, and therefore that size is equal to 10. So it will loop 10 different times, and etc., etc., and it will draw our map accordingly. Now the difference between this is that all we have to do is, before I had I, j, I right here and J right there. All you want to do is flip it, so put JI, JI. The reason being is that the way we've loaded it is different than the other ways that we've loaded it. We've loaded it this time, we've loaded it differently because before the first element represented the row or the elements horizontally, and the second element represented what the rows were vertically, or the columns were vertically. This time, the first element represents the actual column number, and the second element gives us the row's value. So all we have to do is just change that, and it will draw our thing right side, our map right side up, and everything else should run smoothly in your program. So if we go down to our main function, we just have to make our multidimensional vector. To create a multidimensional vector, we simply put vector, then we put a vector again, letting us know that we're creating two vectors. We put the type name, then we put a right stream operator, another right stream operator, and then we put the name of our vector. Simple enough. And then everything else in our program should run smoothly. And when we run this program, it will give us exactly the result that we want. So just wait for this to compile. See, so any size you make it, even if you make an error or whatever, it would draw the map however you draw it in your map file, it will draw it exactly in the program. So it makes it more dynamic because other areas can be longer than other areas, or some can be shorter, or you can make them all even depending on what you want. But this way is less error prone, and it will be more flexible, and you'll enjoy it more later on in the future. So hope you enjoy this tutorial. Thanks for watching, and bye.